Hi everybody, welcome to the County Seat. I'm Chad Booth. Last year, the passage of the new transportation bill had everyone excited. They thought they were going to be soaring like eagles. But a year later, it looks like they're landing like an albatross. We will find out why during the course of our show, as a hiccup in the actual legislation has caused some funding problems. We are going to discuss that today on our program, but we are going to start with a background on House Bill 362 and 60. Here with a report is Cameron Porter.
Roads. Who maintains them? Is it cities, counties, the state? The answer is all of the above. But where does the money to build and maintain roads come from? Well, that's a question that might be getting a different answer due to an effort to correct an unfavorable situation that dates back 20 years.
Going clear back to 1997, about 20 years ago, the state instituted a 5-cent gas tax increase. When they did that, there was a formula shift in how that money was distributed. The formula actually created problems for several counties. For the small rural counties, there was no easy fix. And so they instituted what they call a hold harmless program, where the counties would receive at least 10% more. And then in 2007, it was modified to 20% more than they received in 1997.
The proposed solution happened last year and was state legislation called HB 362. HB 362 established some new revenue streams, then proposed a different formula for distributing the funds the state collects to pay for roads.
In addition to the base that you've had, you would now start getting the average increase that has been afforded to the other entities for that period of time.
And so they would receive the same as the average of all the other entities. That bill went through and passed with the support of all of the agencies, the cities, the counties, the hold harmless counties, and everyone.
But HB 362 had some problems, and so another bill was introduced this past legislative session called HB 60, which corrected the wording in HB 362.
The accounting department at UDOT looked at the language and said that the only part the hold harmless counties could participate in was that actual growth or increase beyond 1997. HB 60, the 2016 legislation, corrected that problem.
So HB 60 is kind of just a little wordsmith issue.
Both HB 362 and HB 60 passed, but are now running into some problems that may derail both of the bills.
What happened, part of the 362 legislation of 2015 included local option sales taxes that would go to transportation. They were a voted levy. 17 entities put it on the ballot. The entities in those counties that failed began looking at their revenue streams. They realized that HB 362's intent shifted money out of the transportation fund to those hold harmless counties. They were much more worried now about the relatively small dollars compared to what the local option was going to bring than they were before.
Virtually every city and county in Utah is getting pinched, but the rural counties who have been operating for decades with little funding are getting hit the worst.
So that's put us in a really difficult situation as far as maintaining our roads, because during the last 19 years, our fuel prices, our oil prices, our labor costs, our equipment costs have all more than doubled, while we've been trying to operate on a flat budget for that entire period of time. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million visitors that come through our area and spend time in our area, and we need to maintain these roads for those areas and those travelers.
So where do we go from here? We'll talk about that and more when we join our guest panel. For the County Seat, I'm Cameron Porter.
Thanks, Cameron. We'll dive into the details of this hiccup when we come back on the County Seat. Stay with us.
There's a little place on a Utah map, where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
When the road takes you farther than you knew possible, when the world is more beautiful than you've ever seen, when home is more comfortable than it should be, this is when you know you're in Kane County. The perfect mix of rural and urban, culture and adventure. Glendale, Orderville, Kanab, Bigwater, small towns with more to offer than just peace and quiet. Kane County, Utah. Find the new you.
Beautiful scene, isn't it? The great wide spaces of the wild, wild west. Hi, I'm Chad Booth, host of At Your Leisure. I'm asking you to support the Blue Ribbon Coalition. Their efforts responsibly preserve access to our public lands. If it were not for the Blue Ribbon Coalition and their efforts, you may not have access to millions of acres of land across the West. This is America's playground, and if we don't do anything, we are going to lose it. Join, participate, and donate.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah. Mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking today about transportation bills and problems that the counties are facing with it. Joining us for a conversation, Lincoln Church from the Utah Association of Counties, who's been intimately involved in this, and either the good guy or the bad guy, the sheriff of the posse with his black hat on the table, Mark Whitney, commissioner from Beaver County and also a UAC officer. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time to join us here today.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, now, it seems to me that after all these bills got passed and they went on to the governor, everybody was happy. Everybody's saying, finally, after 2 decades, we've got our transportation problem solved. And it was great work and everyone's happy. What happened? It's just like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I hear these rumbles about all this problem, and it's just like, I don't get it.
Okay, well, let me kind of start off back some history in 2015 when Representative Johnny Anderson first introduced Bill 362, which was a local option and also a gas tax to be implemented. The gas tax was automatically passed. It was 12% at the rack, which equated at that time to about 4.9 to 5 cents a gallon. Then they also give the counties and cities the option of putting a local option sales tax on for more revenues.
And that was sales tax on everything, not just fuel.
On everything other than food, right. Okay, non-perishable items. Great bill. Representative Anderson needs to be commended. On the same side, Senate Bill 160, Senator Van Tassel had that on the Senate side. The House did not quite like that, so they went with Anderson's bill, moved it forward, it passed. Great bill. He needs to be commended for it. The problem was everybody was so wrapped up in the local option of getting it passed that they, because the gas tax was already there, but some counties and cities never passed that. Salt Lake County, especially, Utah County, up here as far as the urban counties, didn't pass it. Weber and Davis County did. And then when everything was done, it went to UDOT for the funding. There was some flaws that they felt like in the wording, so they did not want to fund that. So in 2015, we did not get any funding.
Because that was specific to the bill. Did they not write that in, that there's supposed to be some
But there were some flaws. They felt like there were some flaws. So what happened, again, the great Representative Johnny Anderson initiated, which was a kind of a fix-all or a house cleaning bill, House Bill 60, to clean up and put better language in so that UDOT could interpret that for the hold harmless counties to move this money forward to them.
Explain the hold harmless county.
Yeah, and I can do that for you. So back in This is old history. Back in 1996, 1997, which is when we had the last gas tax increase, they changed the way in which we distribute gas taxes. So for the viewers who aren't intimately involved in gas tax, the state takes 70% of all gas tax that's generated in the state, and then local governments share the remaining 30% of the receipts that come in. When they changed the formula, they shifted a bunch of money in 1996, 1997 to the urban areas, really in preparation for the Olympics. So when the Olympics were coming, there was this concerted shift to make sure more money was coming to the urban areas to deal with capacity projects. At that time, they put a provision in that said, when we make this shift, we're not going to hurt any of the rural communities, rural counties. So they put a hold harmless that said, we'll guarantee you essentially a certain amount of money based on the funding in 1996, 1997. The problem that's occurred is there was very little growth happening for those hold harmless counties, where the fund continued to grow, and it almost doubled in terms of how much money it was generating just because more people buying gas, more population. Those non-hold harmless counties were getting more of that money, where the hold harmless were really stagnant at their 1997 levels. So during this effort, what we tried to do was change it so that they would experience some growth in that funding as well. And you may ask, why do we need growth? Well, the cost of a construction project has gone up by 300% in this area. And a lot of that was driven by oil prices as well. If you're looking at asphalt on roads, it's largely oil-based. So as oil prices went up, price of construction went up considerably, and they didn't have any additional money to do any of the chip seal work or any of the replacement work. And so this was really an effort to make sure that we were getting money to those rural counties, to make sure that they too had some resources to maintain what is about 45% of all the roads in the state of Utah are in rural counties that they're responsible for maintaining. So an important piece to make sure we can access some of these great areas in our state.
We worked a formula that everyone was happy with. So why all the squawking?
Why all the consternation?
Well, and let me kind of tie in the formula that Lincoln's referring to back in the 96, 97 bill on that gas increase was not, I mean, it was great, but the problem is, as he said, the hold harmless counties did not see growth. Some of us saw negative growth, and so therefore the fund went down in those counties. You know, with all pun intended, it's called the hold harmless clause. Mm-hmm. We, as hold harmless counties, call it the hold hostage clause for nearly 20 years. Mm-hmm. Because some cities and counties that saw significant growth, some got 1, 2, 3, some of them have been up to 400% more B&C road funds because of this. Now, intended or unintended, and I say it was unintended back in 96, they should have looked at a different formula to do this because we got hurt. So it took almost 20 years for them to finally look at this in 2015 and say, we need to come up with a different formula on how we give money to the hold harmless counties.
Do the rural counties look at this as making up for that with the bill that passed?
Absolutely. And I think getting to your point, why was there an issue or why is there some consternation now? What happened is it was a multifaceted transportation funding proposal. And with that, the cities were getting a large portion of the sales tax because that's where sales are generated. Rural counties were going to make most of their money off of the gas tax based on this change in the formula that we just discussed. The problem is we had some of the areas that didn't pass the local option sales tax, Salt Lake County being the main one. So they're not seeing any increases until such time that they really pass that local option sales tax. Because of that, there's just immense pressure for more resources for transportation funding. We've got an $11 billion unfunded need in the state of Utah. That exists both in the rural areas and in the urbanized areas. And with that unfunded need, there's pressure to raise money. And so with that, everyone's trying to glom onto the dollars that exist.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break right here. When we come back, I'm going to start with another question. We'll be back at the county seat in just a minute.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. the dinosaurs did.
In a place that is beyond words, there is nothing to be said, except take your time in Bryce Canyon country.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure. It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking about a rather mind-boggling topic of fuel taxes and a change in the status quo. UDOT's held all this money, and they've set it aside. And going forward, they not only want to refigure the formula so that more money is running to the urban counties in the split, because if I remember correctly, some of the modifications made in it is that 50% of the fund was kind of road-based and 50% was kind of population-based, right? And so they're wanting to come back and readjust that so that it is more favorable to the urban counties?
Yeah, this is an internal allocation problem, right? I mean, this doesn't do anything to anyone's individual tax burden or obligation. This is an internal allocation formula.
Except for residents in Utah and Salt Lake County who haven't yet
passed the local option sales tax. That's correct. But for that purpose, is really what this is a conversation between cities and counties trying to figure out how best to reallocate resources to make sure that we're both taking care of urban needs, which are largely going to be congestion-related needs, and rural needs, which are maintenance needs when you're trying to maintain these roads. We're in this with our fellow counties, whether they're urban or rural, and we're in it with the cities as well to make sure that everyone gets, quote unquote, their fair share. We recognize everyone has transportation needs, just trying to find out that right formula.
It really sounds, and neither one of you probably want to say this, but it sounds to me like a lot of this problem is based on the 27 counties have passed the option for the local sales tax and 2 haven't.
It's not 27, there's actually only been 16, but
16.
Of that, so the local option statewide, if every county were to adopt the local option sales tax, it would generate about $125 million for transportation.
Okay, now that sounds like a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
What about our shortfall, though? Does it fill in the gap?
Not even close. We're about 2/3 of the shortfall would be covered if we adopted the local option statewide. Just to give you perspective, Salt Lake County, which has not adopted, generates about $62 million of that $125 million. So by them not adopting, half of the money is not coming into the equation. If that happens, it changes this whole conversation because you're essentially putting $60 million more into the conversation, which allows the other counties to participate in that and also share in some of those proceeds as well. So once that happens, I think a lot of this goes by the wayside. In the time being where it's not being adopted, and I don't think there are any plans in Salt Lake County to put it on the ballot again, we're going to have this conversation. How do you reallocate the resources that do exist?
Where we see the problem, and we don't want to certainly throw UDOT under the bus at all, because UDOT is only is doing what they've been told by Speaker of the House Greg Hughes and President of the Senate President Niederhauser to not necessarily freeze those funds, but to put them in a trust account. Separate aside, until the cities and counties can work this formula out on this. Now, what happened is you had a lot of these cities that they figured they had a 17% increase in the B&C road funds, so they put their budget based on that. Then they found out it wasn't, so there's a shortfall, okay? Now, and as I say this, again, no pun intended, but if the local option had been passed in those two, especially the 2 big cities, and we want to help them. I mean, even us small counties, they're our brothers. The cities are our sisters. We want to help them any way we can, and so we want to come to the table. But had the bottom line is here at this time is, especially, I'll just use Salt Lake County as As an example, if their local option would have passed in their cities, it would have generated another $48 to $50 million, if I remember right. Instead, to make up that 17% that they need is a $3 million shortfall within all of their cities. I think it's about 400,000 to West Valley City, okay? We're going to try to make them whole on this year, and then we got to figure out the formula. But what is happening is they're leaving and digging for table scraps on the table for this $3 million while there's caviar, prime rib, and ribeye steaks sitting in the freezer with $50 million that should have been there because the local option being passed.
How are you going to solve this? Because if I were a rural county and looked at this, I'd say, okay, well, we ponied up and 16 other counties ponied up and you're not ponying up, so now you want us to pay from what was allocated and set aside for what some of us have budgeted for. You want us to pay that. And this is really a conversation for citizens, I think, so that the citizens understand the impact that their pressure against their leaders about raising enough money to cover the costs of infrastructure, you know, the pressure it's causing, not only where they live, but where they recreate and vacation.
So the current formula is based, as you mentioned, on population and on what's called a weighted lane mile. So if it's an asphalt road, you get more money than if it's a dirt or gravel road. But the big piece, 50% of it, is based on population. So obviously a Salt Lake County does better than a Garfield County just based on that population. What the formula does not contemplate right now, and as you can see as we continue to advertise for the Big 5 national parks, is the tourism-related transportation that's taking place in much of rural Utah. Garfield County gets about 5 million trips a year for tourism going into Bryce Canyon. The formula doesn't contemplate that. So there have been some conversations to say, how do we also include some of these other trips that don't necessarily get reflected in population, but are clearly taking place? So there's those sorts of issues and items that we're looking at to see if there can be some tweaks in the formula to make sure we're also taking care of those rural needs while addressing the urban needs as well.
Just spreading the butter thin so a little of it's out all across the piece of toast?
That is going to be the near-term solution. There is no way. Again, we anticipated $200 million in new revenue, both in gas tax and in the local option sales tax. We're getting substantially less than that, and with that, you're going to have to spread the butter a little thinner.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break here on the county seat. When we come back, I'm going to ask a question that's basically designed to be an answer for you, the viewer, particularly if you're in a county that hasn't exercised their option, so that we can kind of get a picture on what this looks like on the ground. We'll be back with the county seat.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake Adventure, snowmobile action, pristine skiing, spectacular solitude. Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah. The weekends just never feel like they're long enough. By the time you get to a destination, you're worn out and you may need a vacation to recover from your last vacation. The solution is closer than you think, and that's just what you need. You can find the desert at Little Sahara, the cool refreshment of Yuba Lake, escape to the green of the forest on the Nebo Loop. Make your escape to Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking about a move to capture and put in trust some funds that certain counties were depending on for road maintenance and didn't, and that's how this whole thing got going. So what does it take to maintain and keep a road up?
Well, I can talk abstract, and then Commissioner can talk a little bit about it, some specifics. In the abstract, just to give you an idea, there have been some big numbers we've discussed. $200 million a year, that sounds like a lot. Just to overlay 1 mile of road, and we have over 50,000 miles of road in Utah, to overlay 1 mile of road is $1 million. So that gives you an idea. And the maintenance costs of roads are very expensive. To do an interchange on the freeway is about $25 to $40 million, depending on the interchange. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude of what it costs to develop these roads and maintain these roads. So it's a very, very expensive endeavor. Cities and counties total, and again, we're talking 50,000 miles of road, get about $125 million to do the whole thing. That's 125 miles of an overlay on a 50,000 mile system. So that gives you some perspective.
To put that in a little deeper in detail and more perspective in my counties, and not to underscore the importance of urban counties, because they have the same thing. In my county alone, we have over 930 miles of roads, of which 126 of that is oiled, okay?
And oiled is just like a chip?
It's asphalt. It's asphalt roads. These are main corridors in our county, 126 miles. We get roughly 1.2, 1.3 million right now for B&C. We have to run 7 graders, 7 dump trucks and plows, all the other equipment to maintain these roads on $1.2 million. That won't even overlay just a little over a mile. So we have to pull from our general fund, from our PILT funds, everything else, to make up for that pitfall. And the urban counties are facing the same. We're all in the same boat. It just depends on the magnitude of the whole thing.
That doesn't include maintenance, so please remember that's also snow plowing, salting, etc. all comes out of that same budget as well.
And mowing the grass so that the roads don't burn. So basically what people should have as a takeaway from this is that until we address this shortfall, counties are forced, because the money's got to come from somewhere, to go into mental health services, to go into parks, to go into other areas of county water services, other things that you generally are providing with your general fund, and pull some of those monies out just to keep the roads up and running.
Absolutely.
How do you prioritize? How do you sit down and just very quickly?
And it's a tough, because again, I'm one of the old dogs here. I've been in office since '98. And so I've had a lot of experience, and it is truly a juggling act. I mean, Beaver County is the largest contracting county for state inmates in the state. That's the least of our worries. It's trying to juggle and budget our road department and where we're going to get the funds to be able to just maintain them to a proper standard of where we're at. It's not easy.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Thank you for inviting us into your audience. Please take time to think about this, that sometimes you say, I don't want a little bit of a tax, but you have to understand what good it brings to the general community when it happens. Take that into consideration. Share this with your friends. We'll see you next week on The County Seat. If you'd like to share this video with your friends, well, you do that right here. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you do that over here. If you'd like to interact with us on The County Seat, that happens over here. If you want to watch the next episode of The County Seat, you can catch it Saturday night at 11 or Sunday morning at 8:30 on ABC4 Good for Utah.